Hello and welcome back to the studio at European Utility Week. I'm joined by Domingues from the CGI, and we were talking a little bit off air, and the question that I really want to ask you is, and there's been so much talk about utilities business models needing to change, innovate and so on. What are you seeing that the utilities are really asking for? You know, what are the real questions? Because sometimes you can just have sort of vendor push almost, rather than the client push, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so what we see in the market is an increased interest in having a better understanding of what are the new paradigm shifts that will come from the need to move into a more low carbon economy. And the network utilities, they want to understand what is that this will mean for them. They want to understand what are their immediate opportunities, because they exist, and also how they should get prepared for the longer term. They have questions around which solutions and technologies they should be selecting, in which sequence they should be deployed, how best they should be exploited in terms of integration and changes they have to do in their organization. And they underpinning all this, they want to know what are the opportunities for trendy terms like big data, IT/OT convergence, and they are seriously concerned about cybersecurity.
Right. And so if we take that answer and break it apart a little bit, you said right in the beginning of it that the short-term and long-term opportunities. Mm-hmm. Could you crystallize just some of what those look like? Let's start with the short-term ones.
Well, the utilities already have a huge amount of data that are siloed in a number of areas, that if they are better integrated with an end-to-end business process approach, can already deliver tremendous business benefit. It's really doing more with less. It's not necessarily related with rolling out immediately a huge amount of smart meters, even though that will be really important. And there is really not a single answer to what is that each utility should be doing. We receive questions from utilities of very different market structures, different regulatory regimes. They themselves, utilities, have very different market technology maturities, and we need to take into account the specificities of those utilities and also of the local markets where they operate.
And then sort of moving that conversation along as well, and you mentioned a couple of other things, the IT buzzwords, big data, IT/OT, convergence, things like that, and I was trying to get to the bottom of those in some interviews I did yesterday about, okay, well, how much is this really a business need by utilities, or how much is this a thing that technology vendors can now do, therefore they're pushing it?
Well, the fact is that utilities do have a challenge, that there is an increase of decentralized energy resources that have this intermittency and uncertainty, and also the consumer is becoming more demanding and also becoming a prosumer. So they really need to see how the data that they have already available and data that can be taken from the widespread of more technologies into the network can help them in better understanding how they should get higher visibility of the network, more automation into the network, and through that having a better control.
And when you then look at all of these challenges, and what is interesting as well when we're talking off air is, you know, can you just go into a bit more depth about how those are being solved and how you're helping the sort of utility customers meet those challenges as well? Because again, you know, some of the things that were coming up in the interviews yesterday is like, oh, they're big challenges, and I'm like, well, what are they? And it'd be good to get a depth of understanding of the complexity that needs to be tackled.
Well, I think that the biggest challenge is all about integration, in fact, and the need to develop with our clients some middleware solutions that support this integration and bridging the gap between the existing commercial systems they already have and the new requirements that will be needed. And as an example, the smart meters must be much more integrated with all the enterprise applications that exist in the network. The data that are coming from smart meters and more sensoring devices will be key to support a much wider set of business processes, not just network operations, but also asset management, customer care, business processes. And to achieve that, a much higher level of integration at the application level also needs to exist.
And doesn't all this integration also have side effects? Because the more you join a system up using technology, do you not put in some vulnerabilities from a cybersecurity point of view and things like that? Because that was another conversation I was having yesterday. So, well, the more you make this thing interconnected, you know, you're increasing your reliance on technology, and sometimes siloed systems can be more secure from that point of view, can't they?
Well, the fact is that through the widespread of sensoring devices and more powerful communications networks, the OT side is becoming IP enabled. So the security problems that we have been seeing in the past years on the IT side will start happening already in the OT. But for the IT departments, they are now being faced with a huge set of operational assets, IP enabled. It's a huge bigger number of IT assets that can have.
And I would imagine, though, that when you look at that IP enabled operational technology, that behaves differently than the traditional IT infrastructure, doesn't it? Because all of this is real time. You know, the sensors are working in real time and everything. So
that's why the two worlds are so different,
yeah.
Right? In the OT, you put on technologies that have been bulletproof and that will stay there for 20 years or more. In the IT, you have software systems that every 2 years that have to be updated. And of course, in the OT, you need in the network to be always reliably and continuously supplying energy, while in the systems integration, in the system side, the urgency of keeping everything working all the time is not as much. So very different cultures that need to be harmonized. But in terms of the cybersecurity, the two worlds are becoming very similar. And so the IT has to come in to help the operation technology departments in handling the increased challenges on cybersecurity.
So, with the risk of laboring a point, you've articulated the difference between these two worlds and how different they actually are. Why are we joining them up then?
Well, it's all about starting with what are the business objectives you want to achieve. For CGI, that has to come through having an end-to-end business process approach from the field, which is more the OT domain, into the back office, more the enterprise domain. So the smart meter data that lies in the smart meters is not just about consumption. You have a number of events and alarms that, if correlated with other data such as the network topology, can help you, and with what's happening in the comms network as well, can help you even anticipate outages. It can prevent you from sending not so often people to the field to solve problems in the homes where the consumer by himself could solve it.
So you can get much more predictive about where you need to shift your high capital assets and things like that in terms of managing the grid.
Yeah, you will be able to predict better what is going to happen in the grid because you'll have a bigger visibility of what is happening with the assets, what is happening with the energy flows, and also you'll be able to automate based on that visibility, some processes and procedures, and through that get some more efficiencies. And ultimately, you'll be able to manage better the local congestion, and through that increase the capacity and avoid some grid reinforcements and capital investments.
And on that side of things is this perennial topic that we've got about the integration of renewables and intermittent sources. If I could just ask you to comment on that a little bit. I mean, how is that paradigm shift kind of enabling the potential of utilities to have new business models? Because it's not just about integrating them, but I've had a lot of commentators say, well, actually, because this is happening, utilities have a potential to create new business models. For example, by sort of selling, solar to end user customers and managing it for them and things like that. Are you seeing some of those conversations happening?
Yeah, surely. But what is happening is that the world is becoming much more interconnected. First, you have the increase in decentralized energy resources on the generation side, driving the need to more interaction between the generators and the distributors. And on the other side, you have the prosumers changing their demand patterns and also going into microgeneration production, also creating more complex interactions between the demand side, so to speak, and the distributions. And so all that will also need to be solved, so to speak, by enhanced technologies such as the widespread of sensoring devices, more powerful and economic communications networks that will allow across all the value chain more interactions through the market players, which we hope will create new business models. There will be to need more collaboration because the market models need to change for some of the benefits of smart related technologies to be realized.
And can I drill down on these new business models? Because a lot of people are saying, oh, there are new business models. All right, okay, well, that sounds great. But what do they look like? And I accept the fact that each geo will have its own nuances, but can you bring some of them to life where either from direct client or stuff that you've seen, say, look, this is the thing that we can now do that we couldn't do 5 years ago or 10 years ago?
Yeah. Well, we are already doing that with a number of clients. As an example, here in the Netherlands, where European Utility Week is, we have a solution, for example, that is helping network utilities make available through the retailers energy services that allow them to better manage the grid by exploiting the smart meters and other technologies to enable demand side management and dynamic tariffs. And to all that to work, it has to be beneficial for the network utility with its objective of better manage the grid. It has to be beneficial for the retailer in terms of its business model. It has to bring value to the consumer, and even more, in many countries, the central market operator also needs to be involved. So this is an example of the need to create new collaborative business models that really allow to exploit the benefits of smart related technologies. And another example, also here in the Netherlands, is a solution we have developed together with a network utility that allows clusters of consumers to trade their surplus or shortage of energy into the market by making them an active market player.
So
all this is new.
And it's incredibly interesting, but I want to focus in on one thing you said, is all of this reliant on creating a framework where dynamic pricing exists? Because you know, so some of the commentators we've had here in the studio as well have kind of said, well, listen, all of this is great, but we need to drive through more frameworks for dynamic pricing, because if you can't do some of this stuff if you have the old way of pricing energy, because you aren't rewarding high ramp energy, you aren't, like you just said, you don't allow people to trade the energy that they're producing. I mean, how key is the whole dynamic pricing piece to what you've just described?
Well, the dynamic pricing is really just a variable on how you would like to achieve giving value to clients, while also giving the tools that network utilities need to better manage the grid without avoiding reinforcements of the grid. For example, when the volumes of the electrical vehicles take up and everybody decides to charge their cars
at the
6
same time
o'clock when they arrive at home. And that's why at CGI we had the need to develop and articulate a vision that we have been developing with our clients that we call the optimized network utility. We try to avoid the terms of smart grids, because that's not the end by itself of a network utility. What they want is to optimize their network operations, their work and resources, their asset maintenance strategies, asset investment technologies, and keeping also an optimized balance between the investments they need to do and the business opportunities in the market, as well the risks, the costs of the technologies, and the management of the expectations of quite a variety of stakeholders, from regulators, shareholders, and consumers. So at CGI, we prefer to talk about optimized network utilities, the ONU. There is not a single answer to all the questions that our clients ask us, but we see from our experience working with very diversified smart grid client base, common approaches that lead to a successful evolution and transitioning to these more information-centric and digitally connected networks.
So, Anna, can you explain a little bit more about what you mean about the optimized network utility and how that works for you?
Right. So for CGI, an optimized network utility is one that is driven by three fundamental mindsets. As a first, it takes on a holistic approach to all the technology investments that it's going to do and the changes in the organization. It doesn't look at just one single value driver based on the take-up of one single technology. It looks at all the benefits that such technology can bring, especially if it is interconnected and integrated with other technologies, and even more if it includes into the play other market players that can further exploit the benefits by creating new business models. And this is essential because, as I said before, there will be the increase of distributed energy resources in the electrical vehicles, creating more complexity energy flows, also with the prosumers, bringing in an extra complexity, and this will make the ecosystem more interconnected. And on top of that, we'll have the technologies that will make the digital connection with more sensoring devices. So for CGI, the first mindset, critical one, is this holistic approach, the embracement of the energy flows as an opportunity and of the information flows, and network utilities will take a leading role in this interconnected ecosystem in developing new collaborative business models.
And that's kind of critical, and we've kind of come to the end of that, but it's also critical to continue that resiliency, isn't it? Because when you have intermittent power sources, you need a network like this to be resilient, don't you?
Yeah, you do, but you also need to incorporate the right and valuable innovation into your legacy systems in an evolutionary way. So you need to develop knowledge through trials, and you need to develop flexibility all along this journey across your organization, from systems, people, and processes, so that a network utility can really cope with the market uncertainties. There is still so much to understand and learn. And business flexibility will be needed to be able to create these new business models. And this will call for agile flexibility and the break of the IT/OT silos. So network utilities will need technology partners that have this IT and OT combined knowledge, has an innovation profile of co-creating solutions that help them progress into the smart grids world, and that make the link between what they already have in terms of commercial systems and the new requirements that will be needed for them to become an ONU.
And ready for the future, right?
And ready for the future.
Okay. Thank you for watching. That's been another interview at European Utility Week, and I very much enjoyed talking to you. Thank you for making the time to be here.